Okay, so yes, there is uh I'm not gonna do any fancy intro or anything. I'm just gonna use whatever seems fitting later. Um so yeah, there's crazy astrology today. Let me share my screen with you.
Yeah.
Um all right, can you see?
Yeah, I see it.
All right. Um all right. So this is right now, and um if you notice, we just had a full moon last night.
Yeah.
Here, let me drag your face over here. There we go. So we had a full moon last night, and if you see this kind of configuration that's going on here,
Mm-hmm.
this is a super interesting slash significant, in my opinion, configuration because this is like something with the slower planets, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus down here, and right here it's the sun, but eventually Jupiter will be there, and that will be in 2026. So if we go to my we had the trumpet stuff there. I'll have to cut that out. Oh, and I've got my tabs here. Oh
The
Lord.
Caesar, the Trump
Mhm.
Caesar.
Yeah. We go to chapter 30, this one. I titled these in chapters because they struck me as like coherent units, except
Right.
I don't actually I'm not trying to name the chapters of the story we live in, like I don't think it would be cool, I think, to map them to the Book of Revelation, perhaps, if such a thing were to be possible, but I don't know. So, like the chapter names. But anyway, so
Right.
in 2026, you have this configuration happening here, right there.
Yeah.
Um, and this is a pretty big, um, like this is pretty rare for that to happen. This people would call this a basket or a cradle. And
Right.
this is right when Neptune starts a new. This is the first sign of the zodiac right here, so it starts a new thing. Pluto moves into a
Cycle.
new sign. Uranus a new sign,
Right.
and also, or so if we look back at this is now, and right now the sun is kind of in that spot, already activating that thing that will
Right.
happen in
Right. Right.
2026.
So
And
it's
then,
mirroring 2 years from now.
yeah, it's kind of like like it's giving maybe pre-sentiments or something.
Are we
Like
going back to the future?
maybe I don't know. And then so yeah, so right now it's the sun down there. But also interesting about this um is that you had the moon like kind of on that same, like the full moon was on that same axis right there.
Right.
And uh right conjunct with Pluto here. But then also this is a kind of gets a little far out. But if you go, there's a video on my channel called uh The Astrology of Christ's Ministry, and this is based off of Robert Powell's research. Um
Okay.
who was talking about the visions of the mystic Catholic nun. I think her name was Catherine Emmerich, who was had visions of the life of Christ, and through this he claimed that he dated the events of Christ, Christ's ministry, basically.
Okay.
And I don't know how accurate that is.
Astrologically dated them or
Like he also figured out the names of the months and stuff,
okay.
um, and like mapped it to then, and found like, and he also said that the zodiac was different, so he uses a different kind of vernal point or a starting point for the zodiac. So, you know, with all that being said, he says that this is what was going on zodiacally during the crucifixion, which is, and we didn't even know about Pluto at the time, right? So,
Right.
this is far out. As I said, this is kind of a wild thing. However,
Yeah.
this is also a Jupiter opposite Pluto situation here on the day of the crucifixion, according to him, and April 3rd, 33. And if we go back to 2026, this is also a Jupiter Pluto opposition.
Right.
Some people call this a cradle.
Yeah.
I don't know. So So yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing, and that's today. And tonight at 11:30 ish Eastern time, these two trines these two trines will be exact, and trines are generally thought of as kind of flowing, uh, working together, sort of good relating aspects. Yeah.
Okay, so what's coming to my mind um is this actually.
Oh, and also I left out. There's also this is kind of the reason I brought this up initially was not to tell you about all that, but only to say that another thing is we have Mercury squaring Uranus in about 20 minutes, and that's considered a challenging aspect. You know, Mercury could be your thoughts, your perceptions, your communications. In Leo might be a little fiery. Um, and in a square would be like a challenging or structure building aspect to Uranus, which is about kind of like shaking things up, new ideas, insight, innovation.
Mm.
So that's in about 20 minutes. And that, to be honest, that's why I was hesitant to watch the Valentine Tomberg video. Or
In 20 minutes, I'm going to have a new insight. I can hardly wait.
yeah, maybe a challenging
Leave
one.
that up on your screen.
Sure, sure.
And well, that's actually, have you got one that's on, that's turning?
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah. If we go back, yeah, let me go back like this, and
Just
I'll make it,
let
yeah,
it
I'll make
stay
it
on
go by 5 minutes.
minutes.
Or no, that's not.
Okay, so this is what I was thinking of when you were talking about that. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in the sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun. It is moving its slow thighs while all about it, real shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle, and what rough beast its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. That's a poem by William Butler Yeats called The Second Coming.
Damn. I've heard you read that before.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of when you were showing me the cradle and Robert Powell's version of Christ's life and the 2 years from now and the signs that we're in at the moment and this widening gyre, right? Turning and turning. That's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of that poem.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and as far as I remember, let me see here because William Butler Yeats was into the occult sciences too. Um, let me see here. I'm just looking. I think he was into theosophy.
This has been huge on my mind recently, actually. I'm not sure if you've been following along with my videos. I've been making a bunch of clips of uh Steiner's The Reappearance of Christ in the Etheric,
Okay.
and and this Tomberg. I am hesitant to spoil it for you but I can't help it. That turns out The Reappearance of Christ in the Etheric was actually written by Tomberg, and people thought it was written by Steiner for a long time.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
so I've been making these clips of Steiner's thing with him on the thumbnail, you know, as if he was the one who wrote it, because that's what I thought too.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's it's fascinating to me. And
yeah.
because also because I've been thinking a bunch about this concept of the etheric in general. And
Okay, so let me read you this. Yeats had a lifelong interest in mysticism, spiritualism, occultism, and astrology. The guy that wrote that poem.
cool.
He read extensively on the subject throughout his life, became a member of the paranormal research organization, the Ghost Club, in 1911, and was influenced by the writings of Emanuel Swedenborg, Swedenborg's name has come up so many times and I
I
haven't
just
really,
listened to a great talk about Swedenborg. I'll send it to you. It's
yeah.
yeah.
As early as 1892, he wrote, "If I had not made magic my constant study, I could not have written a single word of my Blake book, nor would the Countess Kathleen ever have come to exist. The mystical life is the center of all that I do and all that I think and all that I write." His mystical interests, also inspired by a study of Hinduism under the theosophist Mohini Chatterjee and the occult, formed much of the basis of his late poetry. Some critics disparaged this aspect of Yeats's work. So,
Yeah. I
yeah.
don't know a ton about Yeats, but I know that he was super influential, right? Like he was a really big kind of mover in the sphere of
Yeats
like
was involved in the formation of the Dublin Hermetic Order. That year, the Dublin Theosophical Lodge was opened in conjunction with Brahmin Mohini Chatterjee, who traveled from the Theosophical Society in London to lecture. Yeats attended his first seance the following year. He later became heavily involved with the Theosophy and with Hermeticism, particularly the eclectic Rosicrucianism and of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. During seances held from 1912, a spirit calling itself Leo Africanus apparently claimed it was Yeats's daemon or anti-self, inspiring some of the speculations in Per Amica Silentia Lunae. He was admitted into the Golden Dawn in March 1890 and took the magical motto Daemon est Deus inversus, translated as Devil is God inverted. He was an active recruiter for the sect Isis Urania Temple and brought in his uncle George Pollux Fen Maud Gon and Florence Farr, although he reserved a distaste for abstract and dogmatic religion founded around personality cults, he was attracted to the type of people he met at the Golden Dawn. He was involved in the order's power struggles, um, and was involved when Mathers sent Aleister Crowley to repossess Golden Dawn paraphernalia during the Battle of Blythe Road. After the Golden Dawn ceased and splintered into various offshoots, Yeast remained with the Stella Matutina until 1921. So yeah, there's William Butler Yeats for you.
yeah, so he was all up in that type of stuff.
It was way in there. That's why when I was watching that thing turning and he was talking about slouching towards Bethlehem, I was like, okay, he's talking about an astrological movement in this poem, actually. I could
Yeah.
suddenly I realized
I
it.
mean, that would make sense. Yeah, like everybody who was
Yeah,
into
in the
anything,
widening gyre, right? It's a
anybody,
turn, it's turning,
hmm,
turning and
anybody who
turning.
was
That's how
into
it
it, yeah,
starts.
anybody who was into any of that type of stuff, occult,
Yeah.
anything, even hermetic anything,
Yep.
was aware of, astrology. Yeah. So yeah,
And then Joni Mitchell made it into a song, eh? That song. That poem.
gotcha. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm always slow with poetry. Like it takes me a while to put the pieces together. But
it's okay.
I've heard you read that one before, and yeah, I remember it really struck me. And yeah, that seems.
Yeah,
I do
because
think.
he's talking about the Sphinx, which is Hermeticism. Okay. He's talking about something way, way in the past. And he's projecting also something into the future. So what's turning and turning? The astrological, the zodiac, right? The signs, the universe, the
Yeah.
world. And so, yeah, I honestly never put that together before until just when I was staring at your charts, I was thinking that that's what came into my mind was
Was
that poem.
he at the beginning? Was he referring to? He was talking about. Isn't there another thing where isn't the beast kind of also mentioned in that one where it's like the beast slouching or something? Or is that a different poem? Like,
That is
because another thing about the turning and
no,
turning.
no, it's that it's not the beast. well, he says, what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. Because what he's saying, and what I've always understood, and people have read this poem and said, oh, this is terrible. He thinks Christ is, a horrible thing or whatever. I don't think that's what he's saying. What he's saying is, and obviously from that Wikipedia thing that I just read, the devil is God inverted. Okay. So Christ and Antichrist are two sides of the same coin, right? If Christ is in Bethlehem to be born, the Antichrist is also making its way there, right? Like, because these things, there is no Antichrist without Christ. It's just simply put, right? If there
That
is a
seems pretty
Christ,
cool.
there is an Antichrist. There is always the, the equal opposite to the other thing in the world, always.
Mhm.
And I mean, and yeah. So, but some Christians would find that offensive.
No,
I
yeah,
don't think I don't think it's offensive. I think it's logical, actually.
I think I misheard when you were first reading it there. Um, and yeah, I do think that like
Well, he says, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle.
that's
20 century,
okay, yeah.
20 centuries, yeah.
2000
It's
years.
2000 years. And the cradle that you showed on the
Yeah,
chart.
that's pretty wild, eh? Maybe they were looking at this,
Oh,
you
of
know?
course he was. Of
Well,
course he was. That's
yeah.
why that's why it came into
When
my
was
head.
that again though? Because that might have been before some of these outer planets were discovered.
Um, I don't know when he wrote this. Well, let me see. When did he write?
Isn't it wild that we discovered some planets or we noticed them? Like
Yeah,
we
but
saw.
I thought some of the ancients knew that Pluto was there.
As far as I understand, they only went out as far as
It
Saturn.
was
And
it was
that's
written in 1920.
okay, yeah. When was Pluto? I'm pretty sure Pluto was discovered. Wait, yeah, Pluto was discovered in 1930.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter though.
No, yeah. I mean, yeah, no, it doesn't really matter.
If
But
there's a trajectory on the chart, it doesn't matter if it's not pointing at anything that you can see,
no, yeah, I'm not saying it
right?
doesn't matter. I'm just like wondering if maybe he actually saw like the same chart we were looking at, like if he was distinctly talking about like an astrological configuration as a cradle, or just kind of using the idea of a cradle, um, to symbolize like
So here's an example of what people think the second coming symbols mean. So the gyre, this vortex represents a greater chaos of the world, a microcosm of the swirling cycle of violence and loss that has overtaken everything. And the falcon, in many ways, the falcon represents ordinary people. But in my opinion, the widening gyre is the astrological chart. This is just the insight
I
that I
mean,
got.
yeah, no, there was another thing I was going to say, which is that I do think, like signs and, uh, like messages can be gleaned from like that have to do with like the unfolding of the Christian story, in that way, such that like,
Maybe I got my insight 20 minutes early because remember,
yeah, and we're just unpacking it. That's how it goes with good
because you said
insights,
in 20 minutes there'll be some insight, and I
Yeah,
just
but
and I was
they
ahead
can
of the
take
game.
they can take a long time to unpack.
But maybe it's because I'm on the Pacific coast. I
Maybe,
don't know.
maybe, yeah,
I'm just bugging you.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's crazy to consider, that like looking at this might be like you know, there's probably been plenty of people who've tried to interpret such things in the past, saying like,
Yeah, but
we look,
like
saying
it's
like
just
we look at
interesting to
the
me. It's interest, sorry to interrupt, but I just find it interesting to me that while you're showing me that and you're explaining what these things mean, out of nowhere comes turning and turning in the widening gyre, comes into my mind, right? And then the rough beast slouching towards Bethlehem. Because you pointed out that in 2026 there's a similar pattern, right?
Yeah.
The cradle appears again. And and yeah, anyways, whatever you were saying, what I was looking at triggered that whole poem, and
No, I mean, I'm not trying to, yeah, I'm trying to
maybe I'm just
out here.
totally projecting something onto this, but I don't think so because Yeats was completely absorbed by astrology.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay?
that's when it happens. It happens in July
And he was a
of
poet.
2026. And
Yeah, which is now. I mean, we're in July.
that's
What's
true as
today?
well.
What's today?
Today,
21.
yeah.
Today's July 21, my
Yeah,
friend.
the sun moves into Leo in a couple hours. Yeah,
So it's
down
just
here.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you find it interesting. That's kind of what I was
Of course, I find
tentatively,
it interesting. I find
again,
everything
I'm not
interesting.
trying to, I don't think either of us are trying to make any categorical claims about what may or
No.
may not happen. However, I'm glad that you find it interesting because it's certainly interesting to me that you have these potential, symbolic connections. And as we all know, symbolic connections are not arbitrary. So
Right.
yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll wait and see. And then also following that, perhaps I'm really getting ahead of myself here, but after that, you can see that what happens is there's another big configuration shortly after, which is I was just talking about this last night with a friend actually, um, right here, which is to this big grand trine, and up at the top here is the galactic center in Sagittarius,
Mm-hmm.
and um, this is connected in my mind to this configuration in general is connected to Galahad Eridanos's work insofar as when he posted his first video was when Jupiter and Saturn were conjunct at 0 degrees of Aquarius, right? That was the great conjunction in 2020. Everyone was talking about it. Uh, he described it as the start of the age of Aquarius. And um, then as the relationship between Saturn and Jupiter would point back towards that initial moment when they were connected. It's kind of like that's the interesting thing about astrology is that when you have a conjunction, it's like the beginning of a story. It's like the seed of a story, and then it
Mm-hmm.
unfolds, and you have connections between those two planets that might be challenging or helpful or something. And then eventually, they're opposing each other, and then they come back. So it's like, but it's all connected back to that seed.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like a trine, and it's a big trine. And in my mind, goes to the fact that his cosmogram has the eclipse at the top, the black void, and he uses that. I'm not sure. Do you mind if I pull it up? It's right here.
No, it's fine.
Cool, cool. This image. So he's talked about how
Right.
this is
Yeah.
uh maps to the zodiac, such that Christ is born at the beginning of at the boundary between Aries and Pisces over on the left,
Yeah.
and then you have Leo down here, the fiery lion, Aquarius, the cup bearer up here, and uh Taurus, the bull, which goes with Yaldabaoth and Saturn and stuff.
Right.
And up here would be Sagittarius, um, where the galactic center is,
Mm.
and and the galactic center also happens to be a black shining void, or maybe not shining, but I would say it's shining. Yeah, and if you notice at the beginning of all my videos is the galactic
Yeah.
center, and
Right. Right.
this is so this is kind of, and this mirrors, Jupiter. This is exactly his cosmogram in my opinion, which is, he has madness, Jupiter. This is all connected with Jupiter on the right.
Mm-hmm.
This
Mm-hmm.
is all connected with Saturn on the left. You have Sophia and the demiurge, which is uh and then over here it's like Jupiter expansiveness. It's kind of hard to, I really don't, I get worried about butchering it sometimes, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully
Yeah.
I'm not making a mess of his work, but um or let me find, if you don't mind, I have to find this real quick.
Yeah. It's good.
True Vision, this video. Um, this right here talks about uh, this, Saturn and Jupiter right there. It's the exact same thing. And
Wait, you have to go back. Give me a minute. I'm
sorry.
not.
So he's talking about blindness and madness and Saturn and Jupiter and how you need a balance between the two.
Right.
And then I'm looking at this and it's Saturn and Jupiter and the black hole. I'm like, whoa. So yeah, and that's shortly after in 2027. And it's also at 27 degrees, which he's talked about the number 27 being significant and stuff.
I
So
see.
so yeah. So
Yeah.
that's another.
Well, we just did I've been taking this course with Michael Martin, and we did last Saturday or yesterday. We did Jacob Böhme or Jacob Bohm for English speakers. And he wrote a book called The Way to Christ, I believe. And one of the things that came up was um I don't know, it was a question, I think, something about his interest in the stars and the planets, because Jacob Boehme was his the way he saw the world, he derived, and not just the world, sorry, the way that he saw this cosmological story that we're in, which of course includes Christ, right? And God. He derived his insights from alchemy. So he was alchemically interpreting the scriptures. Just like I was astrologically looking at Yeats's poem,
Yeah, yeah.
right? When
Yeah.
I when I when I map Yeats's poem onto astrology, I'm like, oh, that makes it makes way more sense to me now,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
So, and what's interesting about, and so, but here's the thing with Jacob Boehme. He was a shoemaker. He had no education, maybe some elementary, like he could read and write.
Mhm.
Okay, that we know. But he had no formal education. He wasn't rich. He didn't come from an aristocratic family. He had a vision when he was a young child, and he seemed to somehow know everything after that.
Mhm.
And so people were wondering about, I think when people find that out about Jacob Boehme, there's a dismissiveness that wants to arrive in the way that they approach him, right? They want to approach him in a way that is like, yeah, he's probably just
Yeah.
making shit up, right? But this is the thing about him, he's not. Like his writings are so deep and so profound and so hard to understand for a lot of people, especially if you don't come from that alchemical background. And alchemy is always equated with magic, but it wasn't at the time. Like it wasn't necessarily magic. It was like alchemy was like the fetus of science,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so like Burma, it mattered to Burma where the stars and the sun and the moon were in the sky. And and he paid attention to the effects that these bodies had on our body. And for him, it was plain in the sense, and I'm really like making this basic, like Jacob Burma, not even 101. It's like below the line. Because
I'll
I
start
don't know.
somewhere.
I've read The Signature of All Things, and then I skimmed through the book that we had to have read for the thing.
Mhm.
And but but like I said during the class, I said, what Jacob Burma did was he looked at the world around him, nature, the cosmos. And from that, he intuitively was able to deduct the character of God. He was able to deduct what a human being is.
That reminds me of what you were saying about Goethe
Yeah,
concerning the development of the plant, except it's kind of with the whole universe, like to
right,
see, the
right,
teleology of the universe is God, you know?
right,
Yeah.
right. And that's just from a poetic temperament that is able to just let go, stand back and observe and not impose any of its own things onto what it's looking
Yeah, to
at,
listen to the
right?
story, to listen to the story.
Listen, yeah, and so here's something. I read this yesterday in the or not yesterday, but the other day in that when I read the Desmet essay. Um,
So good. I also want to talk about that with you today.
yeah, there's so much to talk about in that
Yeah, I don't
thing.
know if we'll how much time. I also want to say, right when I was showing you that big grand trine, that's when the square happened to go exact.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is what Einstein said. And I read this in the class because everyone's like kind of going, oh, yeah, okay. So he was just going with his intuition, whatever, like,
Mhm.
and I can see it in people's faces. It's not like they were saying it out loud, but I can see in people's faces that there's this because because intuition, experience, all those things, feelings, those are like secondary, right? We want the facts. We need the facts only. But this is what Einstein said. Thus, the supreme task of the physicist is the discovery of the most general elementary laws from which the world picture can be deduced logically. But there is no logical way to the discovery of these elementary laws. There is only the way of intuition, which is helped by a feeling for the order
Einstein,
lying
folks.
behind the
Einstein.
appearance. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this Einfühlung is developed by experience. And Einfühlung in German is Ein means to go in, and Fühlung is to feel. So it's empathy, right? But you have to empathize. You don't just empathize with people. You actually, it's like what Goethe did. He empathized with the plant.
Yes.
He looked at the plant and he said, I want to feel what it's like to be you.
Beautiful. What a
Right?
I'm impressed by your I was like, man, I don't know if we're gonna get this around to this Matthias Desmond article. I don't know how we're gonna connect these things because we're talking about astrology, but I still wanted to talk about that. But now, you're talking about how,
I c-
how we discern the laws, it's by listening to the story, and like that is the sympathetic resonance, and that's like it's a communication that's going on. And when you're
Mhm.
talking about the most basic fundamental elements, like the most basic laws and stuff, I was reminded of I think it was Chris Langan who said like that uh mathematics is the most basic the fundamental law or something, and like and language is the most uh language is like the most primal form of mathematics or something, and how like the laws, what are the laws? The laws are the rhythms or something. It's like that. It's the musical nature of um, the resonance. It's a rhythmic resonance, and how it happens is we notice when things change. We notice the swells and the troughs, and we see how at various time periods things are different. You go outside, you stop spending all the time on your computer. You go outside like Sherry here, and you spend time with animals. You notice, oh, it's different today. Winter, it's about to rain, or winter is coming sooner than usual this year. And it's like this is the astrology, basically.
Yeah, yeah,
Like yeah.
exactly.
It's so cool.
Yeah, like if we like we've become so materialistic that we don't even look up. Like we actually don't think that the movement of the stars in the heavens affect our lives here on Earth. Like it's just like it's like I don't really understand Grimm's fourth wall metaphor.
I
I
can
don't
explain
really
it
know
to you
what
if
I'm
you'd like.
talking about when I talk about it, but I'm
I
gonna
can explain it to you
guess.
if you like.
I don't know if
It's
I would
about
still,
it's about
I
reaching
don't
through
even
the
know.
screen. It's about breaking through. It's like when a character in a movie turns and talks through the camera to the
Yeah.
audience. He says we need to do that on YouTube. We need to realize that we're just people. And so that's what he's talking about.
Okay, that movement is breaking the fourth wall. When you turn to the
Yeah.
audience and talk to them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting that you should bring that up in terms of astrology. It reminds me of that picture. I think it's a
Well, I
Nostradamus
think
who painted
because
it.
we're so used to being behind glass
Yeah.
that we actually like okay. I mean, I can tie everything into itself, everything together, okay? Like almost everything. Jesus says he came to set the captives free, right? And Desmond talks about making holes in the ego, perforating holes in the ego. Now, I don't know if you remember your clip that you
I
made
do.
of
Yeah,
Desmond,
I do. Yeah.
but he talks about how rationality has walled us in, right?
Hmm.
Remember? And that the resonance has to come through a little crack in the wall and break that down. Well, he also talks about the ego as that wall, right?
Hmm.
And and when we're stuck within the ego, we are behind the veil of appearances, according to Desmond, right?
Hmm.
So, what are we looking at here? This
This is
looks,
you were just really strongly reminding me of this image here.
I'm looking at your desktop.
Oh no. Every time I clicked it, whatever. This one. No. This image. It's very Gnostic kind of image,
Yeah.
this idea of like escaping the world kind of, but symbolically I think there's some truth to it, insofar as like we're locked into.
Yeah, but Desmond talks about that too. Let me read you some. See, this is why I love him so much. Because the first time I ever heard him talking, I'm like, this guy is not a psychologist. He's a mystic.
Yeah.
And
I love that article so much. I actually have a clip ready to go. I was planning to post it later of
oh,
you.
cool. I can't wait for it.
You know, I he's actually
Let me
pretty
read you
crazy.
something that I transcribed from one of his videos because I couldn't live without it.
Sure. Wait, can I say one more thing about what you were saying about the
Yeah.
rationality and stuff? Because like this the boxing in, I want to make sure I heard you on that because I was a little bit distracted looking for
Yeah.
image, and also like there's a thing about that where I kind of have a little bit of pushback on him, I think, because I hear what Vervaeke's trying to say. I don't know if this is good or not, but Vervaeke has mentioned how rationality used to mean just uh a right ratio of things, like putting things in proper proportions.
Hmm, hmm.
And something about that rings true to me. I think maybe like for me, instead of rationality being like the thing, it would be like left brainism or something, like
Well, I actually prefer rationality, and I think that Vervaeke is giving rationality too big of a break,
okay. Heard that.
right?
That's a
Because I think what we should be aiming for is reason.
yeah.
And the reason that I think it's that is because reason is reasonable and rationality is not. Rationality is in it's not flexible. We and we can be deceived by it. We can look at something and think that it's rational, like the gyre is a whirlwind of chaos on the earth and the falcon is, okay, that's rational. Yeah, okay, let's keep that a gyre because that's what a gyre is, right? A gyre is like a whirling thing.
That's true.
But what's more reasonable? If William Yeats is a poet and he's also an astrologer and a Rosicrucian and hanging out with Aleister Crowley.
That might be a little too far for me personally.
No, I don't think they hung out. Obviously, Aleister Crowley stole away something that he loved, but theosophical, all the rest of it, all the
Yeah,
occult
yeah.
sciences, um, then to me it makes more sense that the gyre is the astrological
Yeah,
cycle.
I think that could be a
That's
correct.
more reasonable to me,
Yeah. I'm not
right?
familiar enough with the poem, but I think you might be very
I'm just
correct.
using that
It's
as an example, though, for me what the difference between rationality and because the way Desmond talks about it is he says rationality is when you make connections, right? But those connections end up becoming bricks that sits very closely side by side to each other. And when that happens, then you wall yourself in. And I mean, Tomberg talks about freedom, right? He talks about what true freedom is. And he uses, so does who else does that now? Because I talked about this not too long ago. Um, anyway, I remember Tomberg talking about the Hermeticist. Like he used the example of Teilhard de Chardin, who could go in and out of the occult world,
yep.
right?
Yeah,
And
the closed
and
circle.
right,
that's
because he was, and the Hermeticists can do this according to Tomberg as well, because Jesus says, I am the door, and it is through me that you can go in and out of the pastures, right? It's
yeah,
that verse. And that's what Tomberg talks about. So, and that is true freedom. You
I'm
know,
with you.
somebody like Aleister Crowley is walled himself in through rationality into the occult sciences, and now he's trapped, right? And but someone like Teilhard de Chardin was able to move in and out because he went through Christ into
Yep.
those places.
Yeah,
No,
definitely.
look, there I am. He can enter each closed circle and he can leave it. Instead of prisons, he will find pasture, i.e., he will move in a spiral. It is thus, for example, that Teilhard de Chardin could enter the closed circle of science without being captured, and he could leave this circle by transforming it into a spiral. It is thus also that Saint Martin could enter the closed circle of ceremonial magic without being captured by it, and he could leave it by transforming it into a spiral. The spiral, this is the good news.
So, and this connects. The reason I'm pulling this up is because it also connects to what I was just saying about
Yeah,
that big triangle. Because
right.
the way that I describe, I
Yeah,
may be
yeah.
taking too many liberties here, but hopefully this kind of makes sense now of
Right. Yeah,
why I
no,
put this here.
I totally understood that when I saw it, that clip.
Cool, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is honestly probably one of my favorites. Remember I was working outside in the lawn when I was listening to the thing, and I basically started jumping for joy when I heard you reading this part. I was like, yeah, I can't wait to make a clip about this because it resonates so deeply with me. Like this is
Right.
the vertical connection, and also that connects back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the call with Tom Berg talking about the Pope, because one of the things he talks about in that card is the vertical horizontal respiration idea. I'm not sure if you remember that. And that's
No, but I want to read you this now. It's my turn.
sure, sure.
This is Pierre Simon de Laplace, and he was quoted by Matthias Desmet in a talk that he gave. We ought to regard the present state of the universe as the effect of its antecedent state, and as the cause of the state that is to follow. An intelligence knowing all the forces acting in nature at a given instant, as well as the momentary positions of all things in the universe, would be able to comprehend in one single formula the motions of the largest bodies as well as the lightest atoms in the world, provided that its intellect were sufficiently powerful to subject all data to analysis. To it, nothing would be uncertain. The future as well as the past would be present to its eyes. The perfection that the human mind has been able to give to astronomy affords but a feeble outline of such an intelligence. And Pierre de Laplace, just so there's some context here, was a French scholar born in 1749, died in 1827. And let me see here. Just and he was a mathematician, engineering. So his work was important to the development of engineering, mathematics, statistics, physics, astronomy, and philosophy. So there's that quote from Pierre Simon de Laplace, and then this is the quote that I copied from Desmet. Here's a short one first. We always think that people just want to be free, but that's not true. We are also afraid to be free. Human beings are always looking to find out what the other wants because they crave to be what the other wants. And then here's my long, I'm just going to read the whole thing because it's good.
Sure.
As soon as you participate in the eternal vibration of life around you, you feel that the end of your physical existence is not the end of your existence as a real being. And so I believe that we have to go through the process of rationality. Okay, so this is why I thought of this, because I wanted to talk about what how I feel about what rationality is. So he says we have to go through that process of rationality. What happened the last few hundred years is not meaningless, not without purpose. We have to climb the stairs of rationality step by step. Now, can you pull up that picture that you showed me of the guy looking out of the world into space? That old picture?
Yes.
There. Okay, so just leave that there for a minute. We have to climb the stairs of rationality step by step, but if we do it in a sincere way, we will soon reach a point where we know for sure that there is a land before us that we cannot enter through rationality. Rational understanding is the first part of the process of gathering knowledge. The real knowing, and I like the difference between, Rene Thom, one of the most famous mathematicians of the 20th century, and one of the founders of systems theory, gave us the following marvelous quote. He said, "This part of reality that can be understood in a rational way is very limited, and the rest of reality we can only know through empathically resonating with it." And the first time he used the first knowledge, the rational knowledge, is indicated in French by the word savoir, which refers to voir, to see with the eye. There is a kind of knowledge that you can see with the eye, and through which you can come to a logical understanding of the world around you. But the second word is in French, connaître. It means co-naître, literally meaning to be born together. And so that is a different kind of knowledge. It's a resonating kind of knowledge, which reveals something and which gives you the feeling that every time this knowledge is revealed to you, you are born again. After studying complex dynamical systems, I started to understand that the world and facts are not mechanistic, but not only that, they are not rational. They do not behave in a rational way. The human mind is fundamentally not capable of understanding the phenomena of nature. And that was the moment in which I felt liberated from the idea that I could understand everything in a logical and rational way. Then I suddenly saw there before my eyes people such as Edward Lawrence, who really showed in a mathematical way, which seems like a paradox, and it is a paradox, that complex dynamical systems behave in an irrational way. They have the structure of an irrational number. And people like Niels Bohr said that the only way to say something about atoms, elementary particles, is through poetry. Because he was well aware that this world of elementary particles cannot be grasped by our rational mind. And then from then on, for me, when I looked at nature or other human beings, I suddenly knew that I should not start from the idea that I would ever be able to reduce them to the categories of my own thinking. But this slowly, I believe, moved me in a direction of a more mystical view on man and the world. And that created a space where I could experience the original, the seminal religious experience, the contact with something that is bigger than you, being aware that there is a knowledge outside of you that is much greater than your knowledge, and that true knowledge is not inside yourself, but outside yourself. And this is the essence of what all truly seminal scientists have come to tell us. They didn't arrive at a superior knowledge. They concluded that our rational knowledge is extremely limited, and that if we really want to get in touch with the world, we should move to a different way of knowing, which has much more to do with a feeling of empathy, to do with feeling an empathy with that which we study, and to resonate with the phenomena outside of ourselves. And that is where we get in touch with the spirit, I think. That is eternal and is much, much bigger than ourselves. I believe that totalitarianism is identical to the belief in the illusion, that there is a theory that is complete, that is total. That is exactly the ultimate meaning of the word totalitarianism. It means that you believe that your own theory, be it a race theory such as Hitler's, or historical materialism such as Stalin's, it is the belief that you have a theory which is total, and you have fanatic belief that imposing this theory on society will lead to a new society, which will liberate the human being from all its limitations. That is exactly what we see in contemporary transhumanism, the technocratic idea. It's the idea that starting from a rational understanding of the human being, we can overcome its intrinsic limitations and create a future paradise. Hannah Arendt said that the only problem with the paradise of totalitarians is that it looks like hell in the end. And that's exactly what the individual who believes that his own rational understanding of the world is the basis of everything, and that he can try to control and manipulate the world starting from his rational understanding, he tends to destroy all humanity and ends up in a catastrophic dystopian society. There, I got it out.
Oh, well,
So
who
that's
wrote
the
that?
problem. That's Desmond.
Okay, yeah, no, I thought you said at the you there was a part where you were, my bad. I knew
Well,
that that part.
I transcribed it from a video. He was having a conversation with someone. And I was just like, oh my God, I got it. It took
Gotcha,
me, I don't
gotcha.
know how long
Okay, yeah,
because it was like, go back, type, go back, type.
yeah. I think I've heard you. I think I've heard that exact part before. Is that just like a slight different variation? Like that's
Well, I've referenced often the climbing the ladder of our rationality to poke our head into the irrational, which is what that
yeah,
diagram is, right? That you showed.
yeah,
And but I wanted to read the whole thing in its all its glory because yeah, so that and Desmond talks about see the wheel in the wheel and all the rest of it there. It's
yeah.
great.
Yeah,
So
when you were saying totality, like you have this idea, I was kind of pointing at this here. It's
right.
like this is your people think Gnosticism is about like escaping to a different place that's not here. But I
Hmm.
think about it as like, this is the prison that you've created through your
That's exactly
like a
right.
rational understanding or something. And
Right.
then we can bust out of that.
Yeah. And
And
I don't care if this is a Gnostic symbol. And there's another symbol here in the lineup. It's Blake's Urizen or Urizen right there.
where?
Master of the universe, the guy with the compass
Up,
leaning down.
up,
Just
uh,
no. No, don't go away. It's
this one?
no, go down again. Um right there. It's second you've got the end time pilgrim. It's the one next to it. Symbol reader. Gnosticism. No, right next to it. Right next to
Sorry,
the end time pilgrim.
okay, I'm not reading
Right
okay,
there.
yeah, right here. This one.
This one.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the God of this world for William Blake.
Yeah, yeah.
This is
This is the
this is
Promethean god.
well, he's Urizen.
Okay.
Urizen as how Blake spelled it.
Interesting.
But think about what it's hinting at. It's your reason, okay? Your rationality,
Or
right?
measure, yeah, and which is also kind of like,
It's the thing that we use to measure with,
yeah,
right? And I mean, Blake used the term reason because at that time that's what it indicated, but we it's now morphed into rationality
yeah,
in our modern times, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so that's what Desmond is railing against. He's railing against we think that if something is true, it's rational. His point is that systems theory proves that something can be true and be irrational. It can actually be more true
yeah,
and more beautiful. So,
yeah. I'm Yeah, I'm a little embarrassed because I thought because I remembered who you were quoting from, but I was listening throughout there and I was really resonating with what you said, and I really like it just seems very correct to me. I think that this is the fundamental, maybe one of the fundamental distinctions that needs to be made in
mhm,
my humble opinion these days, which is like this distinction between like the information approach of like um these distinct little bits that are within our closed understanding of like I really like this connection between the closed circle and like definitions. It's like if you have a word and it's about a definition of the word, it's like a
mhm,
closed thing. And then but if you realize that like the word is kind of a pointer to a deeper reality than like and it's not this static dead thing like we have on print, then like but it's symbolizing, which iconically symbolizing a deeper reality, and then you open then that's the open language. It's an iconic language, as kind of Luke Thompson would talk about, right? And I think this is so crucial because it's the difference between the Matrix and the everybody has brain chips and like we communicate through messages and stuff versus like people getting together and singing together, and vibing. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to vibe, it's like
Well,
that's
here's the thing, like I've also been watching and reading Lance actually introduced me to Ted Gioia. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's
yeah.
got a Substack called The Honest Broker. He has a Substack called The Honest Broker. If anybody wants to read a great Substack, and Ted Gioia he's an interesting guy because he's got a master's in business, but he's also a jazz critic and a musician. And his brother is a poet, and he just comes from this family of culture and art and all that stuff. And but he's also really smart. And because of his previous work in business, um he's got a actually, if you Google Ted Gioia and Rick Beato, are you familiar with Rick Beato?
Ted Joy. No.
It's spelled Gioia, I think. And Rick Beato is Beato. I think, have you got it?
These folk.
The Only Creative People Can Save Us, the very first one on YouTube. That one. Um, this is way more, it's long, so we don't have to watch anything right now, but
Yeah.
I highly recommend if anybody hasn't seen it. I think McMo watched it too, and him and Lance and I wanted to talk about it once, but we never did. I still want to talk about it. Like when I when I say I want to talk about something, you guys, I want to talk about it.
Yeah. That I'm this reminds
Because
me of Terrence McKenna.
there's a ton of stuff in that conversation. But what was it I wanted to say about this now? Oh yeah. So Ted Joya made a really interesting point about the fake world that we're entering into, right? This world of fakery. Because both of them are music guys. And so they're finding all this fake music on AI music on Spotify and stuff. And Rick Beato made the point that when he would play one of the songs, he couldn't tell it was an AI, but his kids could.
Hmm.
Like his 17-year-old daughter's like, Dad, what do you want? What are you listening to that AI crap for? He's like, really? How do you know?
Hmm.
He couldn't figure out how they could hear it. And then his son said to him, he said, well, we can hear it now, Dad, but at some point we won't know the difference either. Right.
Hmm.
And so anyway, they go on in the conversation to talk about how this onslaught of fakery, that's my word for it, is going to provoke this yearning for the real in human beings.
I think so.
And so Joya is kind of optimistic about it. And then he talks about trends because he he's really good at predicting things.
Hmm.
And that used to be his job in business where he could predict trends for companies. And so he just went, back in time, and he's able to make a prediction. So this is his theory. After the Enlightenment, the movement that happened after the Enlightenment was Romanticism. And what I found so fascinating about this was that Barfield makes the same argument. Okay, so
Yeah, I think I've heard his
everybody
argument. Yeah.
everybody comes out of the Enlightenment, all science, 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 and rationality, and right logic, and all this. There's rules, and we can understand everything, and we've got it all mapped out. And what happens to humanity after that? Romanticism pops up, fairy tales and poetry and, you know, because people want that incarnational thing that they lost in the medieval, ages. They want it back,
Yeah.
right? Barfield makes the argument that Romanticism didn't go far enough.
Yeah.
So Barfield has this collection of essays called Romanticism Comes of Age,
Yep.
where where he's making the Steiner argument that now Romanticism and science have to come together, right? So the fairy tale and the scientist, they need to merge into this, the spiritual and the science, right, have to come together. And I mean, that's directly, I would say on Barfield's part, that's probably directly influenced by Steiner because Barfield was an anthroposoph, right?
Hmm.
So, but Ted Gioia makes so guess what Ted Gioia is doing now? He's reading all the romantic novels, all the romantic poetry. He's trying to figure out what it is that they were after.
Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know, romanticism is not simply about going on dates. You know,
Oh no,
we're not
no.
okay, because some people don't know this. And, you know,
Right.
romanticism is, about the deep Sophianic, if I dare say,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
um, living, palpating, uh, vibrating, um, connection with the other, I guess, or or anything really. I don't know about, we don't want auto
Well, Sophianic
romanticism.
is a really good choice of words, actually. And well, let's just Wikipedia it here so we can do romanticism for dummies.
Yeah, like I was recently in South Carolina and we went to a romantic garden, and it's not, they don't call it that because you're going to go and have a nice time with a beautiful lady. They call it that because you go and you experience this romantic encounter with the natural world,
Yes.
and it's beautiful,
Well,
and
yeah.
that's what,
So this
yeah.
is okay. Let's turn this. Let's make this really spiritual. This is what the Song of Songs is doing, right? It's turning it's make it all the theology becomes alive in the bride and the groom and their relationship with one another, right? Um,
Yeah.
so here we go. Romanticism was an artistic and intellectual movement originating in Europe toward the end of the 18th century. The purpose of the movement was to advocate for the importance of subjectivity, imagination, appreciation of nature, in response to the Age of Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution. It rejected social convention um, in favor of a moral outlook known as individualism. They argued that passion and intuition were crucial to understanding the world, and beauty is more than merely an affair of form. So,
I'm all
and
about that.
and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and Barfield feels like they just fell short of accomplishing their goal. I haven't read the essay actually. I have it, but I
Mhm.
haven't read it.
That's part of the reason that I like Galahad's work, is because it's very romantic, like
Right.
he has this vivid relationship with his anima
Yeah.
personified, and he has he's talking about like visceral experiences that he has. I'm also reminded of this clip on my channel,
Yeah.
Baptized Imagination and Romantic Theology, for anyone who's
Right.
interested. This was a
Right.
talk in the, it's all up in this group of folk, like you were
Right.
saying.
And but I mean MacDonald falls into the romantic category too. Like he's alive at that time and all of the great poets actually
Yeah.
generally land right in that period of time. And so this is what Ted Gioia's he sees a similar pattern happening now. And he sees this pattern going every 200 years, around every 200 years,
Mm,
right?
interesting.
Where people will fall into a certain way of thinking about the world and then fall out of it and then
Yeah.
fall into it.
Yeah, this is an interesting
And
thing with like people talk about the fourth turning,
mhm,
and I'm pretty sure that the fourth turning lines up with the Uranus cycle, where like every 84, or something. There's like I'm pretty sure there's like it fits with astrology or something, but they just didn't use the terminology of astrology or something. And also, people were aware of like I'm pretty sure people were aware of an 84-year pattern before they had noticed or seen the planet or something. It's all very interesting stuff to think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I want,
Yeah. So anyway, I won't say much more about that, but if anybody's interested, should watch that. And I'd like to talk about it and still do.
sure, yeah. Can you
I
like
try.
send me the stuff?
I'll send you the link. Yeah.
Cool.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
there's I think this would be cool to play real quick. It's just a short definition at the like this guy's definition. Wow, they're making me install Zoom audio devices. Bullshit. Okay, I don't know what's going on here. Can
It's
you
making you install something.
uh yeah, it was. Can you hear this? Or wait.
No, your
It's a
sound is off.
literary and religious construct whose purpose is try on.
Yeah.
One from R.J. Riley in his book Romantic Religion. It's a literary and religious construct whose purpose is to defend Romanticism by showing it to be religious, and to defend religion by traditionally romantic means.
Right.
It's a hybrid field, as it were. Here's my working definition and how I teach it at Northwind. Romantic theology is a hybrid field at the intersection of literature and theology. By exercising creative imagination, reading and writing imaginative literature, and embracing truth and beauty in nature and the arts, we learn to see with other eyes, feel and know within the heart, and taste and see that the Lord is good. In so doing, we transcend ourselves and are transformed, finding love at the heart of all things.
Yeah. Okay, I just gotta see here. I was reminded of something listening that.
Hope I'm not getting.
Hmm.
Can you hear your own voice in the feedback? Let me know if there's any audio stuff. Just let me know. I don't know if I
Yeah, no, I don't.
set
I
anything
don't
up.
hear.
Can you hear me? Okay, yeah, you
I
can.
hear you, yes. Okay, I'm gonna send you this photo, I hope. It's here. Where is it? I just found it on the internet. Now I'm stuck in a Substack.
I even think you see it. I mean, of course you would also see it at this level, but I think maybe for folks who are not so jargony minded as ourselves, we like to use big fancy words. but um but there's this meme that all the kids know, the touch grass meme, It says
I don't know it, but
it's
tell
just
me
touch
about it.
grass. It says the meme is just the phrase touch grass, and it's like go outside and touch
Oh
grass.
yeah. Okay,
People
instead of don't touch the grass.
yeah, like people, or just in
That
general, because
yeah.
people like, what do? Oh man, I'm having such a bad day. Person replies, touch grass. Like
Okay.
people don't go outside anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get a little fired up about it sometimes.
Oh, it won't let me copy. Let me just see if I can get this. I want to send this to you right now.
Yeah,
Hang. Oh, that's not the right
no
one.
rush. No rush. I'll just kind of blabber a bit, and you're hopefully what
Okay.
the
I,
I'm also reminded that, or sorry, or you yesterday you were now on that stream, you were mentioning about your YouTube watch history, like about the type of stuff you watch, and it just added to my appreciation of your contribution to the corner, because like it's like the touch grass meme. It's like people, we forget about that lifestyle is a completely valid option in my opinion. This one where you're learning about how to take care of animals, and like, how do you not rely on big pharma and stuff like that, and like
yeah.
I think I just thought that was cool, and that's a very romantic lifestyle in my opinion. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Well,
Not that it's
My
all
mother,
about.
my mother thinks I just like doing everything the hard way.
Yeah. By
That's what
saying
she
that,
thinks.
yeah, not that it's easy.
I don't think I don't think that's what it is. I I am so curious as a person. Like and I think that that's actually key to being a child, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's something that I've never wanted to compromise on is my own curiosity. I've never, I've had the temptation to keep it under wraps. Don't, because I ask dumb questions sometimes. And it doesn't always it wasn't always easy to be the person to ask dumb questions. Believe me.
Mhm.
But but um but I was never asking them for the obvious reasons somehow. I don't know. It was just I was thinking about something else when I'd ask the question, and it would answer, like, whatever answer I got would answer the actual question that I had in my heart. But like when I think about getting my sheep, for example, that's kind of the most recent thing. And getting into spinning. I've only been doing it for like 6 years. I never owned a sheep before, right? I never spun on a spinning wheel.
Mhm.
And and I was just like, well, if I'm going to do this, I got to do it from the ground up, because I don't think that I can actually produce anything of value if I don't understand the medium that I'm working with. And the medium that I'm working with happens to be on 4 legs, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm going to produce my own, wool, then I need to know what makes that wool good. What makes that wool good? Just the fact that it's growing on my sheep? No, because I found out that if I don't feed my sheep well, my wool is crap,
Mhm.
right? And so now I'm in a relationship with the soil.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, like, the deeper I go into it, the more profound it becomes, the deeper it gets, and the more curiosity I have to know even more.
Yeah.
Right. And my biggest problem is I often have to stop short of where I'm going to go next, because I actually need to go spin some wool.
Mhm.
Right. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, enough, enough, enough. Now
Yeah.
you got to go actually do the thing that you started out to do, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
I can get lost in the depths.
Yeah. Oh, me
Really,
too.
really easily.
I'm often a hopeless romantic, That's me, you
Yeah,
know? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I do a lot of like, I grow a lot of herbs, and I make make a lot of salves, and I look after my animals in as natural a way as possible.
Yeah.
I don't refuse medicine.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a dog on thyroid pills, you know?
Mhm.
And
I love it.
I just had a dog that ended up with a really bad ear infection. I had to take him to the vet, and now he's got eardrops and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But but what I find fascinating is I want to give honor to the body, because the body it's a miracle, right? Like, our bodies are basically just working 24/7 to keep us alive.
Mhm.
Like, we don't know that, but it's just we're living in a thing that is constantly repairing itself, because it's constantly being afflicted by the world around it, right?
Mm.
It's in constant repair. It's just, it would be like if you had a truck that you never had to fix, because if anything went wrong, some little thing would pop out of nowhere and just tick, 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 fix it all up in the night. That's what our body's doing.
Yeah.
And I had a homeopath. I used to have him because he passed away, but for years I had this homeopathic doctor who was also Chinese, and he was head of the Chinese medicine group in Victoria, where they have a very thriving Chinese community. And he said to me, once that the key to good health is providing the proper environment for your body to do the work that it's made to do,
Mm-hmm.
right?
With that idea, yeah. Yeah,
So
like this is people.
every time you assault your body with some foreign invader, I mean, that thing, an aspirin might get rid of your headache, but it's also going to trigger all kinds of different responses from your body because it doesn't belong there,
Mhm.
right? Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't take medicine. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is, and we also want convenience. We want the headache to be gone now, not tomorrow, right? And so we can't wait for these slow processes. Like if you read these old Victorian novels and somebody was ill with the influenza, they might have recuperated for 3 months after their illness somewhere. Who has time for that anymore? I mean, I know when I was working in retail, people were going to work sick,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
These things take time. The body needs time, you know?
yeah.
So, anyway, that's a little bit of a side trail, but yeah.
I was kind of just the imagistic vibe of what you're saying just kind of struck me. It's not that I wasn't listening. It's that it seems I'm with you.
No, you were.
It's, yeah,
Mhm.
it's like I don't know. Yeah, I wanna. It's hard for me to remember though. I'm really.
Oh, well, it's a good thing you got it recorded.
Oh yeah. I was
It's all
saying you were
recorded.
talking about the headache, and medicine. I've had a headache actually, for quite some time today. It's not terrible, but
Mm.
and oh yes, I was gonna say, have you ever heard of terrain theory? It's like
Mm-mm.
so there's this idea where we've been under the germ theory way of looking at things for a long time now, which is that germs they get in and you get sick, and which probably there's some truth to that probably. However, the terrain theory proposes that really what's up with illness is that the terrain, the internal external environment, is not healthy. Like it's not something's amiss with it, and that's when we get sick. So it's like if you don't have enough nutrients or if there's a toxin in your
Mhm.
environment, like then
Sure, of
that's what
course.
causes
Yeah.
illness.
And
And
then here's another thing to think about. Joel Salatin talks about this all the time. He's just phenomenal. But he talks about the microbes in the soil having a conversation with the microbes in our body, right? So, traditionally speaking, we would have been eating the food out of our garden or from someone in our village.
good point, yeah.
Now we're eating food from Mexico, and I don't know where you guys get your food from, but
Yeah, and
I
Lord
mean,
knows what's in it.
I was in
And Lord knows what's in
Switzerland.
it. They wash the hell out of it and then they pump it up with all this crazy shit,
Yeah,
put
but
the
even if
wax
it's
on it.
organic, it's not coming from a
Ever heard
local
have you
food
heard Bill
source.
Gates's new product? It's called Appeal, and it's this new fancy spray that they put on
Oh,
produce.
I've heard of that. Yeah, yeah.
I don't remember
On
I don't
fruit.
remember what's terrible about it, but I remember people saying that there's
It's
terrible stuff.
probably going to be, it's going to probably affect hormones. Most of that stuff affects people's hormones. But like it's like just aside from all the toxins, if you got the most wholesome produce from like the EU is just a disaster in this regard because it's the European Union, they got to trade, they're trading, their economy is dependent on one another.
Mhm.
So they've got, potatoes from Poland, and I was buying meat there because I'm on the carnivore
Yeah, I
diet,
still
right? So
haven't asked you about your trip. I still want to hear about it. I don't know if
yeah, so I was buying meat and I'm like, these steaks are coming from Paraguay? Like what the
yeah.
single steaks in a vacuum sealed package? I'm like, how long did it take them to get here? This is disgusting. And so it's like, if you think about Saladin's proposition that the microbes in the soil are in conversation with the microbes in your body, then there is a lot of dissonance in our bodies, right? Because we're eating food that doesn't come from our own soil. And our microbes are like, what the heck are you doing here?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
aside from all the toxins.
Yeah.
Like, that's
I
just,
don't know how nice. Yes, I'm totally with you. I don't know how nicely it fits, but with my crazy loose associational thinking, my mind went to like kind of the other contextual aspects of the terrain, perhaps like because I was thinking about how like we also like localism is not very much big anymore, right? Like in local communities and people move away and stuff, but even just like the idea of going to work, like uh like it's interesting to think about how like most people probably stayed within a 5 mile radius and were walking by foot,
Mhm.
for most of human history, you know? And
Yeah.
like now we all of a sudden, like I'm reminded of some spiritual folk I've heard who say that, when you go somewhere by plane, it takes a while for your astral body or whatever to catch up, and I think there's some truth in that. Probably like it's weird how like, all of a sudden it's also interesting that like the car isn't actually connected to it's like got like this rubber which prevents the electrical connection. I don't know, dude. It's weird. It's like I don't know. Do you see how that kind of weirdly fits perhaps with the idea of like
Well, I think what you're intuiting there is just that the world is a lot stranger than it appears, right?
it's spread out. It's not
Yeah,
there's no verticality anymore.
right.
Yeah.
It's all horizontal. Yeah. Well, Jonathan, I think I have to go actually.
Hey, I have actually another call planned for tonight.
Oh, do you?
I don't know if I'll be up for it though, but yeah,
You might all be talked out.
yeah, I'll probably find a way to make it happen. I got home super tired from work last night, and then I ended up talking to somebody for a bunch of hours and then staying up editing
Oh,
until like
yeah.
4, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Um, it's so nice talking to you, and I want to hear more about your trip and stuff. And then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe we'll
Yeah,
uh
we'll touch base again for sure.
cool.
I always enjoy
Thanks.
talking with you.
Me too. I love talking with you, Sherry. So nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I hope I get the general impression that you had a good time, but
Oh, I had a great time.
yeah,
It was amazing.
it's
Yeah.
awesome. Great to hear.
Really, really, really good. Yeah. In all kinds of
Cool.
ways.
Well, I'll ask you all sorts of questions about it next time. Cool.
Sounds good.
All right. Awesome, Sherry. I wish you
Okay.
a wonderful rest of your evening. Cool.